They say when thunder rolls across the sky, it is not only the clouds speaking, it is the voice of an ancient king. A king whose footsteps shook the palace floor, a king whose anger flashed like lightning, a king whose power was feared by warriors, chiefs, and enemies alike. His name was Sango. He was not born as thunder. He was once a ruler of men, a king of old Oyo. Brave, fierce, charismatic, unforgettable, but power is a dangerous fire. When it is guided by wisdom, it gives light. When it is ruled by pride, it burns everything in its path. Come closer to the fire, beneath the African moon. Tonight, we tell the story of Sango, the king whose legend rose from the earth and roared forever in the sky.
Welcome to Moonlight Tales Africa, a place where African stories come alive beneath the moonlight. Stories filled with wisdom, culture, emotion, humanity, and transformation. Here we journey through the heart of Africa, through village paths, moonlit memories, forgotten truths, silent struggles, and the powerful lessons hidden inside ordinary lives. So, wherever you are listening from, sit close, relax, and journey with me. Sit close to the fire. The elders are about to speak.
Before we begin today's story, kindly subscribe and become part of this growing circle of African history, wisdom, culture, and moonlight tales. Sit close to the fire. The elders are about to continue their story.
Sango, the king who became thunder. They say when thunder rolls across the sky, it is not only the clouds speaking, it is the voice of an ancient king, a king whose footsteps shook the palace floor, a king whose anger flashed like lightning, a king whose power was feared by warriors, chiefs, and enemies alike. His name was Sango. He was not born as thunder. He was once a ruler of men, a king of old Oyo. Brave, fierce, charismatic, unforgettable. But power is a dangerous fire. When it is guided by wisdom, it gives light. When it is ruled by pride, it burns everything in its path. Come closer to the fire. Beneath the African moon, tonight we tell the story of Sango, the king whose legend rose from the earth and roared forever in the sky. Long ago, in the days when kingdoms rose with drums and fell with silence, there stood the great city of old Oyo. Its palace walls were strong, its gates were guarded, its markets were full of traders, farmers, hunters, blacksmiths, and storytellers. In the morning, women carried water on their heads. In the afternoon, children ran between the compounds. And at night, when the moon climbed above the rooftops, the elders spoke of kings, warriors, gods, and destiny. Oyo was not an ordinary city. It was a city of power, a city of horses, and a city of chiefs, a city where the Alafin sat on the throne and ruled over men. And in that land, one name began to rise above many names: Sango. From his youth, there was something about him that made people stop and look. He did not walk like other men. He walked as if the ground knew his name. He did not speak like other men. When he spoke, even proud warriors turned their ears toward him. He was strong in body, sharp in mind, fearless in battle, and there was fire in his spirit. Some said he was born for greatness, some said he was born for trouble, and perhaps both were true. As a young prince, Sango carried himself with confidence. He loved victory. He loved honor. He loved the sound of drums calling warriors together. He loved the praise of the people when they shouted his name. When he rode out with warriors, he did not hide behind them. He rode in front. When danger came, he did not step back. He stepped forward. He was the kind of man people followed without being begged. The kind of man whose courage could make fearful men stand tall. But even then, those who watched closely noticed something. Sango's courage was like fire, beautiful from a distance. dangerous when it came too close. His anger rose quickly. His pride stood high. His words could strike like a spear. And when he felt insulted, he did not easily forget. Still, the people admired him, for in those days a kingdom needed a strong man. Enemies watched from beyond the borders. Rival powers waited for weakness. Chiefs measured one another with silent eyes. A king had to be bold. A king had to command respect. A king had to make his enemies tremble. And Sango had all these things. So when the time came for him to sit upon the throne of old Oyo, the drums spoke. Gangan drums rolled through the palace. Talking drums called his name. The people gathered in large numbers. Chiefs dressed in fine robes came forward. Warriors stood with spears in their hands. Elders watched with deep, careful eyes. And there before the throne, Sango was crowned Alafin. The crown was placed upon his head. The palace became still. For a moment, even the wind seemed to wait. Then the drums thundered, the people shouted, the warriors lifted their weapons, and Sango sat upon the throne of old Oyo. Young, powerful, confident, a king had risen. From that day, the palace changed. When Sango entered the royal court, men stood straighter. When he sat on the throne, chiefs lowered their heads. When he gave an order, servants moved quickly. His presence filled the room. He was not the kind of king people ignored. He was the kind of king people felt. In council, he spoke with authority. In battle, he showed no fear. In celebration, he shone like a man born for praise. And the people of Oyo looked upon him with wonder. Some loved him, some feared him, some did both. They said, "Our king is not like other kings." They said, "Sango carries fire in his eyes." They said, "When he speaks, it is as if thunder is hiding behind his voice." At first, these words sounded like praise, but slowly, praise began to mix with fear. Because Sango did not only want to be obeyed, he wanted to be felt. He wanted his power to be known. He wanted no man to question him, no chief to challenge him, no enemy to mock him. The palace became a place of honor, but also a place of tension. A chief could not speak carelessly. A servant could not make a mistake without trembling. Even those who loved him watched his face before they spoke. Was he pleased? Was he angry? Was the storm sleeping or about to rise? And when Sango was angry, the whole palace knew. His voice rose, his eyes burned, his hands gripped the arms of the throne. Men who had faced battle without fear would lower their heads before him. Chiefs who were old enough to advise kings would suddenly forget their words. The people began to whisper in corners. They whispered in the market. They whispered near the palace gates. They whispered while pounding yam. They whispered while fetching water. Do not offend the king. Do not speak against him. His anger is not ordinary. It comes like a storm. And yet there was something else, something mysterious, something the people could not fully explain. Around Sango, strange stories began to grow. They said fire answered him. They said lightning moved when he raised his hand. They said thunder rolled when his anger rose. Whether these stories were born from truth, fear, or the imagination of a people who had never seen a king like him, no one could say for certain. But one thing was clear. Sango was becoming larger than life. Then came the symbol that would follow his name forever. The double-headed axe. It was not an ordinary weapon. It was bold, balanced, fearsome. Two blades facing opposite directions, like judgment that could strike both ways. When Sango held it, he looked less like a man and more like a force. He carried it with the confidence of a warrior king. He lifted it before his chiefs. He held it before his enemies. And when lightning flashed in the sky behind him, people whispered even more. They said, "The king does not only rule the palace." They said, "The storm knows him." They said, "Perhaps Sango is not like other men." But the elders knew something younger mouths did not understand. A man may be gifted, a man may be powerful, a man may be praised by thousands, but if he cannot master himself, his greatest strength can become his deepest danger, for power is like fire. In the hands of wisdom, it warms a kingdom. In the hands of pride, it burns the house down. And in old Oyo, the fire around Sango was growing. His fame increased, his confidence deepened, his temper became feared. The palace drums still praised him, the warriors still followed him, the people still shouted his name. But behind the shouting, there was unease. Behind the praise, there was worry. Behind the glory, a shadow had begun to move. The chiefs saw it, the elders felt it, the people whispered it, and the sky seemed to know it too. For some storms do not begin with rain, some storms begin in the heart of a man. And Sango, the king of old Oyo, was carrying a storm within him. A storm of power, a storm of pride, a storm of anger, a storm that would soon break loose and change his story forever. The winds began to shift in old Oyo. Where there had once been admiration, whispers grew louder. Sango's anger, once seen as the fire of a strong king, became a storm none could predict. The chiefs, once loyal and bold, now moved with cautious steps. The people once proud of their Alaafin now watched the skies with fear. Then the tragic moment came, a moment when power slipped from the grasp of control. It is said that in his anger, Sango's lightning fell upon his own palace. The thunder roared, flames danced, and the royal court trembled under the weight of destruction. It was a tragedy that no one could deny. The fire he once commanded had burned too close. In the aftermath, silence fell over Oyo. Chiefs bowed their heads, and the people turned away. The once great king stood alone, shaken by the consequences of unchecked power. The palace that had echoed with Sango's voice now stood still. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder, no longer a symbol of his strength, but a warning. Faced with the fallout, Sango could no longer remain on the throne. The chiefs gathered, and the decision was made. The king would leave. Exile was not only the choice of men, but perhaps the will of the gods. Sango, with his double-headed axe, departed the palace he once ruled. His steps were heavy, yet the storm followed him. As he walked away from the gates, dark clouds gathered overhead, as if the heavens themselves echoed his turmoil. The people watched him go. Some wept, some breathed in relief, but all knew that his story was not over. A man may leave his kingdom, but his legend remains. As Sango walked into exile, the storm did not fade. The clouds rumbled behind him, lightning marking his path. His power had become something greater than his reign, a force that would live beyond his days on earth. And so, as the people whispered about his anger, they began to realize Sango was no longer just a man. His legend was becoming greater than life itself. His name became one with the storm. The lightning in the sky no longer frightened them as before. Instead, it reminded them of the king who once ruled and of the power that could not be contained. In time, they saw the transformation. Sango was no longer a ruler of men. He had become a force of nature, thunder, lightning, fire. His story was now told beneath the moonlight, passed from elders to children. And when thunder rolled across the sky, they did not just hear the clouds, they heard the voice of a king. The king who became thunder. The legend of Sango immediately became quiet. No, sometimes when a powerful man leaves a place, his shadow remains behind. The throne was empty. The palace walls still carried the memory of his voice. The chiefs still remembered the way he sat with authority. The warriors still remembered the way he rode before them without fear. And the people remembered everything. They remembered his courage. They remembered his pride. They remembered his fire. They remembered the way his anger shook the court. They remembered the tragedy that followed his uncontrolled power. And when the sky rumbled above Oyo, many hearts trembled, for thunder no longer sounded ordinary. It sounded like memory. It sounded like warning. It sounded like Sango. In the market, women spoke in low voices. At the palace gates, guards looked toward the clouds. In the courtyards, elders sat with their walking sticks and shook their heads. Some said, his power was too much for one man. Others said, his anger destroyed what his courage built. But there were some who spoke differently. They said, do not speak only of his fall. Remember also his greatness. Remember the warrior. Remember the king who made enemies afraid. Remember the man whose name carried strength. And so slowly, Sango's story began to change. It did not disappear. It grew. It passed from mouth to mouth, from elder to child, from palace to village, from drumbeat to moonlight. At first, they spoke of him as a king. Then they spoke of him as a legend. Then they spoke of him as something greater than a man. Because there are some people whose lives are so powerful that even their mistakes cannot bury their names. There are some stories the earth cannot hold alone. They rise, they travel, they become wind, they become song, they become thunder. And so it was with Sango. When lightning split the sky, people remembered his axe. When thunder rolled across the clouds, people remembered his voice. When storms gathered suddenly, people remembered his temper. And when fire flashed in the heavens, they remembered the king whose power had once shaken old Oyo. In time, his name became tied to the storm itself. The people no longer spoke of thunder without remembering him. They said, when Sango speaks, the sky answers. They said, when lightning dances, the king is near. They said, when thunder rolls, do not laugh carelessly. Stand still, listen, for an ancient power is passing by. And so Sango became more than a ruler of men. He became a symbol of powers, a symbol of fire, a symbol of justice, a symbol of anger that must be controlled, a symbol of greatness that must bow to wisdom. His double-headed axe became a sign of divine authority, one blade facing one direction, one blade facing another, as if to remind the world, power can protect. And power can destroy. Judgment can defend the innocent. And judgment can consume the proud. The same fire that gives light can burn down the house. The same thunder that announces rain can shake the ground beneath our feet. That is the mystery of Sango. He was not remembered because he was perfect. No, he was remembered because he was powerful. He was remembered because his life carried a lesson too deep to forget. The elders understood it. So when children gathered under the moonlight and asked, who is Sango? The storytellers did not rush. They looked toward the sky. They listened for the distant sound of thunder. Then they began. They told the children of old Oyo. They told them of a prince who walked like the ground knew his name. They told them of a king who sat on the throne with fire in his spirit. They told them of warriors who followed him, chiefs who feared him, people who praised him, and a kingdom that trembled beneath the weight of his temper. They told them that greatness is beautiful, but greatness without control is dangerous. They told them that courage can win battles, but wisdom must rule the heart. They told them that a leader may command many people, but if he cannot command himself, his throne is already shaking. And when the children became quiet, the elders would point toward the clouds and say, that is why you must listen when thunder speaks. For thunder does not only announce rain. Sometimes thunder remembers. It remembers the king who rose with fire. It remembers the palace that shook beneath his anger. It remembers the road of exile. It remembers the man who became legend. And it reminds every generation youth that power is never enough. Power must have wisdom. Strength must have patience. Authority must have self-control. A crown may sit on the head, but character must sit in the heart, because a throne can raise a man high, but only wisdom can keep him there. And so the story of Sango did not end with exile. It did not end with sorrow. It did not end with the empty palace. His story climbed into the sky. His name entered the drum. His memory entered the storm. His legend entered the people. And from that day to this day, when the clouds gather, when lightning cuts through the darkness, when thunder rolls across the heavens, some still pause and remember. Sango, the warrior king, the fire-hearted ruler, the one whose pride brought consequence, the one whose power became legend, the king who became thunder. So come closer to the fire and listen well, for every legend carries a mirror. And the mirror of Songo asks us, what will you do with your power? Will you use it to protect, or will you use it to destroy? Will you allow anger to lead you, or will wisdom hold your hand? Will your strength bless the people around you, or will your pride burn what you were called to build? The moon has spoken. The lesson is yours to keep. Power may make people fear you, but wisdom will make them remember you well. And when thunder speaks across the night sky, may we not only hear the roar of Sango, may we also remember the lesson of his life, that the greatest king is not the one who commands the storm. It is the one who first learns to master the storm within.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like, comment, and share so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.